this episode, we interview Sam Parkhouse. Sam is a station officer with Fire and Rescue New South Wales with 18 years experience. After watching a fellow firefighter struggle with PTSD, Sam took it upon himself to create a program to assist others going through this journey. He now runs mental health and wellness retreats for firefighters who have had to take a break from operations due to their mental health. Remarkably, he has been successful in having the majority of this funded through the New South Wales equivalent of work cover. Sam explains the origins of these retreats, how they currently look, the incredible results they are seeing, and how the attitude towards psychological injury is changing. The interview was conducted by Jason Anderson and myself, Tim Stisher. It's important to note that the retreats Sam talks about in this episode are only open to New South Wales firefighters. For us, we have the services Pheasant offers, all of which can be found on the Gateway. Enjoy the episode, and remember to take care of yourselves and those around you. So thank you for joining us, Sam.
No worries, Tim. Thanks for inviting me along.
Pleasure. So we had a little bit of a rough outline of your bio there just previously, but can you just give us a rough idea of who you are and what you're all about?
Yeah, so I started with Fire Rescue New South Wales. At the time, it was known as New South Wales Fire Brigades back in 2006. Within a few years, I pursued rescue as a specialty. In about 2015, I undertook my Urban Search and Rescue Rescue Technician Cat 2 course. I got involved in the instructor pool a couple of years after that. For the last 5 years, I've been a station officer. I work at Blacktown Fire Station in Western Sydney. I've been attached to Blacktown for coming up to 16 years now. But majority of my working life within the fireys has been kind of Western Sydney based. However, I have kind of worked everywhere from the outside the GSA, kind of like Lithgow out to Orange, and then throughout little bits of the northern beaches and what we call the north side when I was relieving as an RO before being permanently put back at Blacktown. Had a few kind of interstate, and international deployments within that USAR space. 2017, we were up in Proserpine in Queensland on the back of Cyclone Debbie. From there, we spent a number of weeks around the Northern Rivers from the flooding events that happened on the back of that cyclone. 2019, 2020, very busy bushfire period for us. So there was times there you probably spent the best part of a month away from home, kind of a week at a time, bouncing around the state on various kind of strike teams or multi-agency building impact assessment teams. Joined actually a lot of your compatriots in 2019. We went to the US for an exercise, Shake and Fury. Using a combined Oz 1, Oz 2 exercise. That was an epic experience. And then more recently got deployed to Turkey early 2023 on the back of the earthquake that struck over there. So yeah, that's my kind of operational history in a nutshell.
Right. So yeah, very well experienced, a broad range of experience there, from normal firefighting duties to tech rescue to all your deployments and everything, and so it gives you a real wealth of knowledge and background. So then, what have you, or how have you led into what you're currently doing, or maybe first of all give us an idea of what you're currently doing and where your passion lies at the moment, and then we can talk about how you got there.
Yeah, so for the last couple of years, really pivoted towards kind of the psychological welfare of fireys. I think some of this was exacerbated by becoming a station officer, where you start developing a bit of that pastoral care over your crew, and trying to take a pretty holistic approach to their professional and personal development at work. Whether it's trying to support them and get them access into training programs and promotional programs and things of that effect, to being able to support them kind of when the chips are down for them in a very personal capacity. Because we work in fixed crews, the station and your crew becomes like a second home and a second family, and the health of that workplace and that crew is contagious. So if you work towards keeping everyone in good health, then everyone kind of maintains good health. If you have people starting to slide for whatever reason, that can become contagious, and then you've got to kind of put out all these little fires on many fronts to try and stop an implosion occurring. And then for the last couple of years, I've formulated and got a couple of really good trusted firefighter friends to support and help me with the development of what's been called the Fire Rescue New South Wales Wellness Summits. Where we're at with it at the moment is that we take fireys away for 5 days, 4 nights. We have an opening kind of 2-hour surf session with a surf school, and partnered up with a foundation called Waves of Wellness, which kind of blends psychological health and surfing and all those things about being outdoors, the blue space, being in the water, and creating safe spaces for people to be quite vulnerable and talk about what's going on for them, whilst partaking in physical activity within a natural environment. After we do that session, we go to a property that we use. It's a 100-acre property, a couple of really big houses on it. So everyone has their own bedroom, their own bathroom. And over the days after that, the cohort engages in both group and one-on-one practices, where we'll have a daily breathwork 1-hour session of a morning. Throughout the day, individual practices take place where they have one-on-one with our breathwork practitioner, who also does cold exposure for ice baths, body work, meditation, and we also have a doctor of psychology on site where people have a lot of time that they can go and spend time with her. And then we come back together in the afternoon, do group PT, group yoga before dinner. And throughout the day, we have kind of art sessions that just run all day. So when people have their one-on-one appointments, they disappear, go and do those, and then just kind of flow in and out of the ongoing art process that just runs all day. All of these things were chosen because they're scientifically backed in how they can support psychological injury and illness. And all our practitioners have lived experience within trauma, and majority are either ex or serving first responders or military backgrounds. So we have a practitioner cohort that is very relatable to all the fireys that are there in attendance. And what we're trying to do is provide a circuit breaker where people get a period of time where they can immerse themselves within a range of holistic practices, purely around focusing on their self-care. The circuit breaker component in itself goes a very long way. Due to our nature, like people who choose a vocation of firefighting or any kind of service, serving others, we put ourselves last all the time. And we do it for people we don't know from a bar of soap, let alone when we've got, families, young kids, and those other kind of needs where you'll always put them before yourself. And as a result, what we see is a lot of people don't do what they need to do to help maintain their well-being. So by putting them through this immersive space, they're removed from their normal environment. Focus is 100% on themselves and doing activities that we know are good for them. The idea is that by the end of the week, we don't expect everyone's going to walk away going, I resonated with every activity, but they generally will resonate with kind of three or four out of the 6 or 7 or so that are on offer. And we then kind of have discussions about how they can maintain and sustain what they've learned when they go back to the real world. So, an hour of breath work every morning and 90 minutes of yin yoga every afternoon isn't really viable for most people, depending on what their life looks like and things like that. So we do spend time at the end of the week to work out how we can chunk these things down into achievable time allotments. And we get them all to write up their own schedule for when they leave based on whatever their roster might look like. So if they're on the 24-hour roster and that works over an 8-day cycle, we ask them to build it over an 8-day period. If they're on a special roster, which for us is like a Monday to Friday day work, we get them to build it over that kind of cycle. So when they leave, they've actually got something that they've kind of formulated whilst being in a pretty clear headspace, to be able to kind of continue. And because they've written it down in their own handwriting, they're kind of they're accountable to themselves. So that's kind of the program in a nutshell about what it is and what we do. I guess the way we got there was I had a previous senior man of mine that looked up to quite immensely, pan-ultimate professional, and he had some mental health challenges, and it was I guess that we all know that mental health and associated injury, illness is real, but for me it hit home when I saw it kind of unfold, and when it happened with someone that in my mind was, I really had up on a pedestal as being kind of invincible. And we're smart enough to know that that's not real. No one's invincible. It doesn't discriminate. And when I saw him having a really hard time, I just was driven to try and do something more and to do something for him, and try and establish something that creates a bit of a net to be able to try and grab people and help them on their way.
Sam, sorry, mate, can I just butt in there? Just
Yep.
with that process with that senior firefighter, looking back now, was there certain things that was sort of occurring or happening that you probably didn't pick up right away? I guess what I'm trying to ascertain is, as a leader, and you said it before, as the SO, you're station officer, you're looking now through a different lens of what you did as a firefighter, and now all of a sudden we're looking after our crew. What are some of the things that you picked up that you probably, now that you probably didn't pick up then?
Kind of those subtle changes in behaviour. I remember when I caught up with him, so when he kind of really put his hand up for help, he was in quite a distraught state. And when I caught up with him and we kind of went through things, we spent a number of hours just reliving every critical incident we'd ever attended together. And it was, of course, for him, it was clear as day and everything was flooding back. And then we talked through things and he was able to then self-identify all these shifts in himself that he never recognised at the time. And it was just things like his sense of humour was fading away. He kind of said, he remembers after a job that we had, there was a joke that was cracked in the back of the truck on the way back and everyone had a bit of a laugh, and he said, I remember sitting there thinking, I'd normally laugh at that. That was funny, but I'm not. And he couldn't really rationalise why that was occurring. And that was something that was years prior to him getting some help. Now, particularly because of the nature of kind of guy he is, he's really diligent, and if he's prescribed something, he will follow it to the letter. So he's had a really good recovery. And he engaged in everything that was on offer for him, that was being provided through his kind of workers' comp and treatments and stuff like that. And as hard as it was, they're not easy things to engage in, but he did and did it to the letter and had a very good recovery, which a lot of that for him in my mind is because of the tenacity that he has anyway. And he was still able to kind of combat some of that cognitive impairment that occurs, to kind of go, I need to trust my medical practitioners and what they're giving me to do, like the range of kind of treatments and engagements. And he was doing a lot of mind-body stuff as well. So we know that like trauma is known to be held in the body. And in the nature of our work, and this would be the same as coppers and ambos and defence, to protect ourselves, we narrow our emotional spectrums to protect from the bad stuff that we encounter. But you can't selectively choose what you block out. Your emotional spectrum is exactly that. So when we try to flip a switch and not absorb the negative stuff that we'll encounter, we inadvertently contract that whole spectrum. And then the stuff up the other end, the positive end, like the simple joys and happiness and laughters and things like that, that dissipates and disappears as well. And as a result, that's where people will start also then taking quite high risk behaviour, because they're chasing that sense of joy or fun or excitement or something like that. And then also due to the nature of our work, we get natural adrenaline and cortisol dumps in high stress environments and intense jobs. Kind of observing people's behaviours in those environments can be a little bit of an insight into maybe where they're at as well. I know for myself, I had a period where I was chasing that thrill, and was actually in response to not feeling very well. And you just found yourself taking disproportionate risk for what you're encountering, because you were seeking a kick out of it to actually feel alive. And then, sorry, I've digressed a bit. So back to the guy in question, because he was engaging in all these practices and actively doing things like kind of yoga and guided meditation and things like that, and making sure he was engaging in physical activity, he was actively trying to rebuild that mind-body connection again as well, to get himself feeling actually back in himself.
Yeah. Just
so that's,
can I,
yep.
I jump in there as well, Sam?
Yep.
Really, I really love what you're talking about with the retreats that you have set up. I think that's enormously beneficial. In New South Wales, do you guys also have another avenue for mental health help through the organisation, or what's that framework look like?
The organisation has come a really long way from the time I started. And a lot of that, you put down to generational stuff as well, being that society is coming a long way as well, and so therefore workplaces are too. Like we've got a pretty good size wellbeing team that's a mix of wellbeing officers, a wellbeing coordinator, organisational psychologists, and that team has been forever kind of growing in its size since I started. As a result, a lot more programming and research has been done, and then programming on the back of research. And there is, delivering of wellbeing based education pieces into recruit programs and into other kind of promotional programs that these things are always being revised and reviewed, and then trying to get them into more avenues to reach more people. through those promotional programs as time goes on. So that's from that preventative space. But then we've got our injury management space where it all comes under our health and safety. But they're the side that is then dealing with the injured workers. So that's with the retreats, that's through injury management with injured workers. That's another area where, they're always trying to build, get more resourcing and have a formidable sized team. There's always going to be injuries in the workplace. Some are easier to recover from than others, especially when you're comparing physical to psych and then the severity of it. We've had a really big level of support out of the injury management side with the retreats. And a lot of the administration is effectively done through that side of the organisation. And it's not purely on a focus of, we're trying to force people back into work. We're trying to give people the opportunity to decide that their health is first and foremost, and they need to make educated decisions based on that. Things like when you retire, especially if you've been in, we're talking for most people that end up being in decades is what their service life looks like. Life doesn't end when you retire. So what's the benefit of retiring unwell? And so we've had people attend, like we actually hold a position on every retreat for a retired firefighter who, it was essentially they're medically retired. They have an open claim, and that's how their attendance is able to be funded. And the idea is that we break you, we buy you. And because you're not wearing the uniform anymore, it doesn't mean you don't matter. It doesn't mean that you're forgotten about. You're just as entitled to having a good quality of life thereafter. And we've had some people attend that actually said that their attendance really helped with that transition, or actually really helped with them in their decision to have agency in their life to go, you know what, for me, my vocation is the hazard for me. And it's time for me to hang up my hat. It might be a bit earlier than I thought I was going to, but I'm electing to do it. And by having that sense of agency, goes a very, very long way with people's recoveries and particularly into that next phase of life, into their retirement.
That's a huge realisation to have, isn't it? At some point you do realise that this choice of occupation is not the best for us mentally and physically. So it's a huge thing for people to come to that realisation and at some point go, okay, maybe it's time that I look at something else, or time for retirement or whatnot. I'd imagine you'd see that a lot through the retreat process of people realising what's important to them.
Yeah, and it's kind of, we don't try to push anyone in one way or another. We're neutral. We just kind of go, look, you need to come to your own conclusions about what you want, and then we'll do what we can to help support you, whatever that looks like. So we've had people that it's very much, no, my end goal is I want to be back on the truck. Okay, cool. That's what we're going to work towards. Others that go, there's other things I can do within the organisation that isn't within operations, and I think that's the direction I need to start looking. And then there's the other side where people go, yeah, my workplace, no matter what it looks like it's purely wearing the uniform, I'm at a point where that is just hazardous to my health. And then from there, we can actually help them engage with kind of the right people within the organisation, have the discussions about what transition looks like, whether it's into kind of non-station based roles or whether it's into retirement, and how that bureaucracy is navigated and what entitlements may or may not be involved depending on the case and all that type of stuff. But I think it's really when they actually feel like someone's listening to them and that they're cared about, that they don't have that sense that they're just a number, and that they also have the ability to have a bit of a say in their journey forward. Can have a really positive impact on their mindset. And your mindset, no matter whether it's a psych or a physical injury, has a very big impact on your recovery as well. We quite often, you guys might see a similar kind of sentiment up there, that you'll have people that they'll talk in a way where it's like them versus an organisation, and whatever led to the point that has created this environment, it could be a thing where they've had conflict with a manager, or elements of management in different areas or whatnot. Generally speaking, it's normally to do with a hierarchical structure scenario. But we do try to have really, meaningful conversations with people to kind of go like, that's you and one person having friction. But the way you framed it in your mind, with a real us and them, from a rank and file to the proverbial management of the organisation, is that you've effectively, we have 6,800 odd fireys plus trades and admin staff. So you kind of go, you've almost made it where it's like, in your head, you're fighting 7,000 people. And even having those kind of conversations with people in the setting that we're creating, because it's very peaceful and it actually allows people to down-regulate and actually be able to think a bit deeper and not ruminate on some of that within that hypervigilant state. Having your own light bulb moment and having your own little epiphany can be, pretty profound. And we use, we reiterate sayings like, resentment is drinking the poison, hoping it kills the other bloke. Mm-hmm. While going, but it's just eating you up. Mm. This stuff is literally killing you. So yeah, let's look at things you can do to address that, like in a professional way with psychologists and stuff like that, while supporting it with these other physical activities as well. So with everything we do, nothing there is to try and replace what anyone's treatment protocols are. It's all to be supportive and complementary in line with what they're already doing.
So Sam, in the infancy of the program that you started,
yep,
what was there any resistance towards those chosen firefighters that went on the program? I mean, we're all sort of picturing that person. It's generally that stoic senior firefighter that's, unbreakable on shift. How's that received? Is there some sort of standoff as to, do I need to go on this program? How does that work?
So at the moment, because we're a couple of years in, it's a lot easier than it was the first time around. Throughout its duration, it's been kept very discreet. It's kind of borderline like an invite-only type thing, which is done through case managers, where they're referring the people they oversee who they think would benefit from it. That's very intentional, because we didn't want big internal comms stories about it, because we want people, if they're attending, to know that their privacy is respected and that discretion will apply and that they're safe and they can say whatever they need. Those things obviously have those usual kind of caveats around kind of mandatory reportable type stuff, where if someone's at risk or someone else will be at risk, we'll address those things accordingly. But we needed this to be a really safe environment for a bunch of practices that we're doing for fireys, where this is super foreign stuff. Mm-hmm. This is one guy coined it freaks and weirdos. This is a guy who attended. When he goes, I thought we were just going to be a bunch of freaks and weirdos. and he ended up being one of the biggest converts. Wow. So yeah, on our very first arrival, that first group, I think when the bus came up, with the Monarchs. We got them all to muster at a point where they could just leave their cars for the week, and we bring them up on a minibus. You can see them getting off, looking around, and just kind of going, "What's this all about?" And then the first question was, "What's the catch? Am I expected to be back on the truck a week from now?" And it's gone, no, there is no catch. There is no agenda. This is about you as a human. This is just you and your health, in the hope that you can get something out of it to improve.
Does it take
and it generally takes 24 hours.
I was just going to ask that question.
Oh,
yeah, go for it.
Yeah. So it generally takes that first day to break it down. And because now we're 2 years in, we're actually into our third year, and there is a little bit more anecdotal kind of evidence floating around the service of this thing that does exist, and I know someone who knows someone who went on it, or I know someone who attended, and because it has had really rave kind of reviews, and because it's being driven by fireys that are really kind of, I guess the positions we hold are really grassroots. We're in stations, we're SOs, we're rescue operators, we're all Cat 2 operators. And because we've worked both within training roles as well as operations, within a small service, you end up meeting a lot of people over a number of years. So you've just kind of got that street cred, where we seem to be able to have a conversation with someone who is on the fence about coming. And these are at times, these are people that we don't know. They work in parts of Sydney that I don't, or the other guys that help me, they work in different zones. But after kind of having a chat to them, we can get buy-in because we cut through, because we're in the uniform, and we're sort of working within the organisation at their level, in stations, on trucks and things like that. So that's that first hurdle you got to get over to kind of, it's like recruiting people almost. And then that first 24 hours, generally that 2-hour surfing session, what we're seeing is most people aren't surfers that are coming. So they're under the board more than they are on top of it. But that's a really good icebreaker. I heard a fire actually use the term, the ocean is the lotion. Just for getting in the water and letting your stress kind of melt away. So between that and having some kind of deep conversation on the beach beforehand, and then people are having a laugh together, having a crack at surfing, that has become, since the introduction of the surfing, because that wasn't there at the beginning, has become now a really good little ice-breaking component to allow people to drop their guard. Yep. There's all that, we talk about that power of vulnerability. It's really hard to get people to be vulnerable and tell you what's really going on for them if you're not prepared to display the same. So we kind of do that on the first day as well. And myself and the other facilitators will have a chat. We'll tell them about our backgrounds and our stories. That inevitably gives them permission to do the same. And then once that's out on the first day, everyone's kind of now at a foundation level, and then we work at kind of working our way and building people back up.
And what sort of results are you seeing, Sam?
Really good. So we've been, for any of the kind of research and data boffins out there that might be listening, we've been running qualitative and quantitative surveying. We do it on the day of the arrival, the day they leave, again at 3 months, again at 6 months. We use DAS PCL5 personal wellbeing index scores, as well as a handful of questions. And it's all for direct comparison. So essentially, day one, the overall kind of stress and trauma scores are quite high. By the time they leave, we have a very dramatic reduction. At 3 months, it creeps up. 6 months, it creeps up again. But at 6 months, we're consistently seeing that they're lower than they were on the first day we saw them. And then with the qualitative data, those numbers are kind of correlating with comments around when I apply my practices, I know that I'm good. When I start becoming not so good, I also recognise I've stopped applying my practices. So that's kind of in a nutshell where we're at with it. And at the end of this year is when we'll have 3 years worth of surveying, which would be like upwards of like 480 odd surveys, which will give us kind of statistical power to get analysed quite thoroughly.
Yep. And after they finish the retreat, is there any follow-up with them? So you're saying it sort of climbs back up over the next 6 months, and so is there any follow-up and processes they can do to start bringing those scores back down again, or what's the process?
Yeah, so on some of the feedback after our first year, so originally this was a 1-year pilot. After the first year, we got resoundingly positive feedback, but we didn't have enough to generate statistical power. So we got a grant for another 2 years. But part of the recommendations, we went from 4 to 5 days, which we're now at 5 days, and also running what we call refreshers. So we're now running 4 single 1-day events a year, roughly every quarter. And that's where everyone who's attended gets an invite saying this is the date we're running it, and we're going to have breath work, meditation. The tables will be set up for body work. There's going to be yoga. We're going to have ice baths set up. We're putting lunch on and make a full day of it. So we've put those in place now. So people can kind of come back and have a bit of that reset. And even just that social aspect goes a very long way too for individuals. We are also moving forward with actually having some more formalised psych follow-ups. So everyone who comes there, they're going to have their own kind of psychologists and or psychiatrists. Where the one that we're using with us, who lives in for the duration, she does it like a pre-screening before they attend, and that's also like part of an introduction as well. And then we're now going to add a post-attendance follow-up with that as well. And pretty much where people have found really good value in her attendance, she's ex-military. She also worked for fire and rescue within our wellbeing team for a period of time, so she understands the organisation as well and the machinations. And she has a really good network of trauma clinicians and stuff as well. So she's been able to be a really good third party where people can kind of go, look, I think I'm plateauing, or I'm doing this and I'm just not progressing anymore, or I'm feeling like I'm regressing a bit or whatnot. And she's able just to be that kind of independent person to go, okay, well, have you thought about these different options? Maybe go speak to your GP about this and this. Speak with your psychologist about maybe these options that if they're on offer and if they provide that kind of service, and things to that effect. So that's something that is will be starting shortly. But at this stage, that's kind of all that's in place for that post follow-up. Actually, with the exception, every group that we have come through, we use, if you're familiar with the app Signal, it's like another version of WhatsApp. We set up a Signal group for every group. It keeps everyone in touch. The practitioners are in there too, so people have questions about what they're doing at home and need a bit of advice, they can get that responded to. And that just kind of keeps a bit of it starts to develop an organic support network amongst all the people that have attended.
For the likes of the firefighters that are still operational, I mean, we're all operational.
Yep.
Just in the earlier conversation, you were mentioning some looking for that early retirement, don't want to do the job anymore, go along, for that recovery process. For the ones that are still operational and on the trucks, what's the success rate of someone returning back to duty on the trucks with the program?
Like I know, so organisationally, our overall kind of stats around that from injured workers, so this is physical and psych, we have something like a 97% return to operations rate. That remaining 3% is kind of broken down to like a 2 to 2 point something ish percent moving into a non-operational role, and then we generally have less than 1% results in medical retirement.
Right.
But that's all injuries. That's physical and mental. With psych, it skews a little bit differently, where I think it's more of about a 90% rate of returning to pre-injury duties,
which I think is incredible in itself.
Yeah, but psych injuries are also, they're very complex and they're multifaceted, and there's a lot to really address there. And like we've had, from people attending with us, we've had both ends of that spectrum, where we've had people that have made their way back onto the trucks and that's where they wanted to be, and we've had other people that's been that quiet moment in time for them where they've come to their own conclusion to go, I need to work out what an exit strategy looks like.
Nice.
And start having those conversations. And we've been able to arrange some of our managers from those spaces, and they're the ones that work really hand in glove with the insurance side of things, who really understand regulation and the insurance side as well as the fire rescue side, to come up and actually make themselves available at the retreats and the refreshers for a handful of hours, where they're saying, I'm here. If anyone wants to come and spend some time and speak to me and ask questions about your individual case and circumstance, and what various options would look like about if you want to stay or if you want to go, we can flesh that out. And a lot of that's really about dispelling rumour and I guess misinformation is a bit of a strong word, but there's the things that float around stations can be detrimental really in how people then approach actually putting their hand up to get help.
Are you
especially
suggesting that the rumour
think
mill in the fire service in New South Wales is not entirely accurate? Up here, our rumour mill is completely factual. Everything is based on fact.
Yeah, well, we used to, when I first started, we had like our logistics support vehicles, which are our trucks that go and swap air cylinders and bits of gear around from stations and all that stuff. When they were kind of running at a higher frequency than they kind of do now, that was effectively the postman of the rumour mill.
Yes.
So they go to one station, they'd have a cup of tea, swap the air cylinders over, grab a bit of gear that needs to go back to the workshops or whatever, and then they go to the next station and go, you wouldn't believe what just happened over here, and stuff like that.
I don't know how you breed them down there. We're completely different up here. It's we have respect for each other. We'd never stoop so low as to make something up or spread gossip or innuendo. We're different.
I was actually, a couple of years ago, I was successful in being able to break a rumour myself, and it was about people getting sacked with heart conditions. In recent years, we've had mandatory health checks have been implemented. And I did mine, and I had a heart condition that I had no idea about. There was no symptoms, there was no signs. Got an ECG, and was removed out of operations as a result, because of the diagnosis. And it was an electrical issue. This is at the back end of COVID. The hospital systems weren't so great. Made a poor life choice after our second child to reduce what our private health cover looked like. Didn't think I needed cardiac as a 30-something-year-old. Appears I did, and so had to navigate the public health system that was on skeleton staff because they were all crook with COVID. Like long story short, essentially I went in for a procedure. I agreed just to do it on the table without an OR because they couldn't get an anaesthetics team. And so just kind of strapped down to the table. They kind of went in, did the ablation, and that was on a Monday. I think I went home Tuesday. The cardiologist signed me off on Thursday morning. The brigade medical officer signed me off Thursday afternoon, and I got a call on the Friday for overtime.
Beautiful.
Yeah. And that's one of those things that it's like an unheard of story in the folklore that is the fire brigade. And when I went and did that shift that I was called in to do, I was telling the guys I had surgery 5 days earlier, and they've gone, "You should be sacked."
Yeah.
Oh, why? And he goes, "Because that's just what happens."
Yeah.
That was their response. It's not
That's the
they don't want
rumour.
me sacked. They're just going, "But that's how it is. You got a heart problem, you're sacked."
Yep.
So it's we can really be our own worst enemies with things like that, because what we do is we create this sense of fear that occurs that stops people getting help. The earlier you get help, the better your outcomes are always going to be.
Do you find the same thing is true of people seeking help for any mental health related things? Or do you think there is a difference between people seeking help for mental health related things for the same reason, thinking they might end up getting sacked or, it's a detriment to their career?
Or the problem is with depending on how far someone's into the depths of their injury, which they may or may not have really even recognised has occurred yet, is that you get that cognitive impairment that starts kicking in with psych injury and illness. So your ability to actually make clear-headed decisions is already being impacted.
Yeah.
And if you have a seed planted saying that it'll be detrimental to disclose for, we're talking about things like, job security, financial security, and the knock-on of that, what it looks like in someone's life and their family. If that seed's planted that they might lose their job, more often than not, you watch people that ruminate on that element, which then amplifies it. The only way to break these things, one, is really, I guess, we always hear about the horror stories that occur within a workforce. We never hear about the things that go right. We never hear about when it works, when the system works. I've come across plenty of firers that over the years have had an injury of one form or another. And everything that was supposed to happen did. They got their surgeries or whatnot. They did their rehab. They recovered. They were back on the truck.
Yeah.
But that's not the thing that people talk about around a mess room table.
Yep.
And yes, the reality is there are people that, due to whatever the nature of their injury or illness was, it culminated to a point where it ended their job as a firey.
Yep.
But I guess the flip side of that is, so when I went in to get my heart procedure, they pull out this bit of paper and go, "Oh, can you sign here?" And I was adamant, going, "Oh, yeah, just got to get this done. I'll be back on the truck in no time. Can you sign here? Here's all the disclaimer, pretty much going, if you die on the table, it's not our fault." And they're running through all these stats. And when they said you have a 1 in 200 chance you're going to stroke out, and 200 is not a big number, eh?
No.
Like, I was saying, well, how many have you done leading up to today? Are you at 198? Anyway, signed it, went in, did it all, and it wasn't a problem. But I remember having this really clear, distinct moment in time going, the value I thought I had being operational on a truck, when they're telling me I could die in the next half an hour on a table, had a really quick reality check.
Yep.
Going, you know what? I don't, like, we all bind our identity up quite heavily in what we do for work. But when you're faced with a very clear-cut potential decision there and then, that moment was very distinct. And I deliberately made sure I recollect on that as just a balancer to really go, what is important? Because the nature of what I was diagnosed with was essentially going, oh, look, you could go your whole life and never have a problem. You could walk down the street and drop dead.
Yeah.
That was the kind of two options. So it was a thing going, well, I'm still going to get the procedure done because I live an active lifestyle. I don't want to have the threat of something happening, especially where it could be catastrophic with no warning. Yep. But yeah, I think we need more positive stories to be told
Absolutely.
around the stations, because people trust who's on the other side of that mess room table.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think you're dead right, and it's I think we do cling to the worst case scenario a lot of the time. You know, it only takes one horror story, and that overrides 100 positive good news stories. So I think, I'm not sure whether that's human nature or the nature of our job in particular, but I do find that's the way it works here. One thing I wanted to touch on is from previous conversations I've had with you, you've mentioned the way you went about getting funding for this program. Can you talk us through that and where that currently sits?
Yeah, so because we're working through an injury management space, which is in the workers' comp scheme, so we kind of had to partnered up with EML, who manages all our claims and like kind of our insurance, and had really good support from them, because a lot of the stuff was, whilst we've had pretty good progression over the years of getting people recovered and back to work and things like that, our overall annual numbers of people with psych injury were kind of maintaining. You could argue that, well, now people are feeling a bit more safer to actually put their hand up and ask for help. So, like, you know, that whole thing of trying to get on top or get ahead of an issue is going to be hard when you've got people that literally joined in the 80s that are still on trucks, and what life and culture and everything was to them throughout their career to where it is now. They're trying to get ahead of that generational kind of cohorts is going to be very hard. But essentially when they're going, yeah, look, our kind of numbers of people that are experiencing this are maintaining at a similar point, even though we're getting better progress and getting people into better treatments quicker and things like that. So they're very open to, particularly since it was a concept, being that it was by firefighters for firefighters, going, well, these people speak their language. And with the results of that first year, we then got overwhelming support to keep going for another couple of years, just to really get that statistical data, to have formidable arguments about the benefits of the program. So yeah, it was a thing where there were a range of conversations that were had, that had to tie in kind of the regulator down here, CIRA, EML, iCare, and tie all those conversations in with the organisation to make sure everything is, you know, got good governance and is clean and compliant. And because it's for injured workers, and it's through the workers' comp scheme, then the primary kind of funding mechanism is their claim, in the same way that any other of their treatments is being covered.
That's fantastic. I think that is just incredible, and you know, hats off to you for being able to get that over the line. That seems like an enormous effort, and knowing how difficult it is to navigate red tape, I think that must have been a huge effort to get it across the line, and you know, fantastic on your part.
Yeah, look, we've got some kind of really top tier civilian staff in our health and safety as well, that without their support, this wouldn't have got off the ground. They helped champion it. They worked really closely with those other kind of insurance and regulatory partners. And that's, it was that kind of really combined effort is what was able to turn a concept into something that actually came to fruition.
Would you have a look at if you just looked at your organisation as a whole, what would you say would be your perception of the overall mental health of the organisation for operational staff? Do you think do you think mental health is a huge problem, or where does it sit on the scale?
Yeah, I think it's one of those, it's like a creeping beast. I think it's something that we would have a huge proportion of people that are flying under the radar, whether knowingly or unknowingly. We've effectively, like I was saying earlier, where we've got people that joined the fireys in the 80s and 90s, and they're still on trucks, and society looked very different than it does now, let alone kind of what our workplaces look like. So yeah, I believe we've really got probably significant generational catch up to do. I don't think it's like unique to us. I think this would apply. I feel confident in saying in any emergency service, defence, anything that's kind of that first responder or combat style agencies. And however, we're also getting better at understanding what maladaptive coping mechanisms look like as well.
Yes.
So as an organisation, yes, I've seen a lot of progress over the years of where we're at now compared to where we've been. I guess mental health stuff, right? That's if you're able to find that silver bullet or a cure, or you end up being a very rich person. It'll always be there. And there's things like in recent years where we saw what COVID did just to the general public with stress. And on the back of COVID and the on again, off again lockdowns and everything else that was encompassed within that, all of a sudden, mental health professionals' waiting times got completely blown out. And that's when people are seeking help when they've already hit their critical mass. They're by the time you're actually going, yeah, I need to invest in some help with this, unless you're really self-aware and you're getting on it early, and then to be told you got a 6-month wait.
Yeah. It's not, yeah.
And that's general society, let alone people that are exposure to critical incidents and all this other stuff is part of their BAU in whatever it is that they do for a job. Makes it very challenging. So, I guess to answer your question, that I think it's like that creeping, sleeping beast thing that is there, and it'll be simmering away. You'll always have people that will unfortunately fall through the cracks, because they'll be the people that might just get up and leave, and no one really clues into why. So I guess it's about having as much resourcing available that is on a very broad spectrum of what that looks like. There is no one size fits all. You need to be able to give people options and give them something to engage in. And what actually some of the feedback we got with people who have attended is that by the end of the week, for the first time in some cases, like a number of years, they've actually felt well and they've felt content and happy. And the significance of that is they now know it's actually possible, where they've been pretty numbed out and pretty negative headspace for a significant amount of time leading up to that. So the ability to actually feel good tells you it's possible, it's not lost, and it gives them something to work towards.
Yep, absolutely. I think that's a huge thing for people going through those dark spaces, of which I've been in myself. Not being able to see the light is half the problem. If you can see the light, if you know that is achievable, that feeling of wellness is achievable, that's half the battle, knowing that you're actually capable of that. So that's really great to hear that you're getting a lot of feedback from people leaving saying, I haven't felt this well in years, because it's very difficult to get yourself out of that position if you're not even sure that it can be achieved. So that's fantastic.
And where we started off like with pure psych injury context, it's now expanded into, I guess, what I just overall refer to as just stress. So we've had fireys that have they've been going through cancer treatment, and that is a significant journey for people, and very much so develops secondary psych kind of symptomology to it. People with long-term physical injuries that have really starting to take that toll on their mental health. They're now getting access to this as well. So, because at the end of the day, all of this is just about stress. But what causes your stress might be different to my stress. So it's really kind of going, just that recognition of the way it was framed to me by a person who attended on the back of their cancer battle, and everything was all clear, and they're kind of going back to work. But they said for them it was a really interesting kind of place to be, that when you've kind of given that all clear, that you have people around you saying, "Oh, that's great," and slapping you on the back. You're all good now. That's the last 2 years. We can forget about that. That doesn't mean anything anymore because you're good now.
Yep.
And they're like, "Yeah, physically, yeah, but I'm not good. I don't feel good. I'm glad I'm in remission. I'm glad I'm clear and all this stuff." But it was like the first time they were able to actually take a breath from all the treatment that they've been going through, to actually self-reflect and go, "I'm not distracted by all the treatment now. I can actually just be and recognize that I'm not feeling great." Because it's, that what doesn't kill you leaves a scar.
Mm.
Um,
Yep. Yeah, that's a huge battle. Having been through cancer myself, I understand exactly what you're talking about there. You're so focused for the period of time that you are sick on getting better. You neglect your mental well-being through that time because you're fully focused on your physical well-being. And then as soon as you get that all clear, it's everyone's applauding, saying, "Oh yeah, great, that's excellent, you're back." And then all of a sudden you think, "Oh no, actually, physically I'm back, but mentally I'm not back." So it is a huge thing. So really great that people going through that journey have the ability to attend this as well. And you're exactly right. It is just a stress thing. You just, and we've had, we did an episode recently with a lady who was talking about completing that stress cycle. So this is these retreats seem to be an excellent way to complete that stress cycle.
Yeah, 100%.
So where to from here then, Sam? Got a great framework, and you've done a few years worth of retreats and got everything up and running. Where to from here?
A lot of things are going to hinge on this final report. So it's that thing. I don't want to get kind of too ahead of myself. We're kind of working forward in a way. Look, it's easier to turn something off than it is to turn it back on. So it's easier for us to prep and keep moving forward. And then, pull the ripcord if we have to, or delay it or whatever going forward. There are a lot of ideas around, and things how we can expand what we're doing beyond just the fireys, but also to their families. The collateral damage that occurs within a household is pretty significant. It's not just the fiery living. Like if we're talking a PTSD kind of case, it's not just the fiery that's living it. So is everybody else in their house. So yeah, we're looking at kind of things around how we can better support partners. Other things about how we can better support kids. And a lot of that's going to be around what kind of engagement and education, especially with the kids, because they, once again, depend on their age and stuff, but they don't know what's going on. They just see mum or dad in a state that can be just really volatile, hot and cold, unpredictable, and then it results in children living in a hypervigilant state because they don't know what version of mum or dad they're going to get. And that stuff is really damaging. That's, that kind of response that kids are going to feel, and always being in a sympathetic nervous state, firing all the time, starts to lock in.
And then perpetuates the cycle within the initiator of that, whoever the person is going through the PTSD cycle or whatever it is. That cycle is really hard to break, isn't it?
Yeah, and that's essentially what, there's a lot more discussion these days around generational trauma.
Mm-hmm.
And that's exactly where that stuff comes from.
Mm-hmm.
Whether it was in the back of the First World War and soldier coming home and, with what we would now call PTSD, they'll call it shell shock back in the day. And they'd drink or high risk activities, and they'd be violent, and it'd be, DV type stuff would happen. As a result, that's what kids see, and that's what their environment and their upbringing becomes, and then that has then taken the toll on them, and then they perpetuate it, and then it's all it's breaking that cycle.
So you're looking at retreats for them as well, for kids and for families.
Yeah,
or what
it'd be very with partners, it would be something that would be very similar. But it would be kind of facilitated and fronted by a partner, opposed to a fiery running it, because we've got to create the world that relates to them and resonates for them. But we'd use the same kind of practices, because if you can have a partner go home with an experience that aligns with what the fire's experience was, one, not only are they now feeling kind of loved and respected by the organisation and everything that they've given up to support their partner, who's the firefighter, the two people in this partnership now have the ability to engage in some of these practices together. And they, not only does it bond people by just doing stuff together, if you're doing stuff that's actually in your for the betterment of your welfare, it has the potential to be pretty profound in trying to repair relationships and things like that as well. And they can hold each other accountable, especially if you start seeing, the simmering occurring in the other person in their mood, and they're starting to elevate a bit, going, hold on, why don't you put that down? That doesn't matter at the moment. Let's go pull the yoga mats out. And just half an hour, our time, go do this. And stuff like that, to do an activity that's tactile, that helps them down regulate. And then with the kids, we'd be looking at a shorter version, more like a long weekendy type thing. Probably in the concept of like a farm stay, outdoorsy, in nature, animals, and kind of doing activities that have a sense of purpose and working towards a bit of a goal, whilst being able to have conversations and stuff that's talking their language at that age group. There are a range of kind of non-for-profits around that have stuff for kids and whatnot. But I guess the feedback, like we've had people attend our program that have been in inpatient care within hospitals. And whilst they're very different, this isn't comparing what we do to an inpatient program, but I said one of the noticeable differences for them attending was that they were just amongst their own, not in a clinical setting that had a mix of police, paramedics, fireys, combat veterans, like kind of all within a program, where the only shared experience that all those people have is just trauma, is just like pure trauma. But the nuances around it were very different. Where when you got people where they're just from the same vocation, but even just the same agency, they know all those nuances, they know the bureaucracies, and they even just things like acronyms, the way they talk, the language. So you just immediately feel more comfortable amongst your own. So having that principle and applying that to the partners and applying it to the kids, where we kind of have ownership over that program, where it's just for our own, and it's kind of, it has that sense where the people give up a lot for their job and for the type of work we do. Like I had one guy tell me, every time he puts the uniform on, a bit of himself dies. So if we can try and combat that by actually having the organisation being front and centre and to support its people and their families, I guess when we talk about that broader, like earlier, about the overall mental health of an organisation, that's how you start to shift that needle. Yeah.
Mate, one final thing that I want to ask is getting away from the project that you're on, but just as an on-shift station officer, like you've had a vast amount of experience in different disciplines in your career. One of the things I'd like you to sort of get a message out to the other station officers or command leaders or whoever is not everyone's comfortable dealing with those situations. Some people are very good at it. Some people are often fearful of stepping into that area because of the risk of that potentially could make that situation worse. Sometimes just listening is enough for somebody. But if there was a message to pass out to those leaders and how they can look after their people, what would that be?
I think and it's a thing that's not always easy. Like you have to be really cognizant of making it a deliberate effort until it becomes more natural. But I guess it's to try and look through a situation initially, potentially through a medical health-based lens before you'd look at something in a punitive lens. Which then may just prompt you to be able to start a conversation in a way that may allow someone to actually open up about what's going on for them, and as a result, some of their, whether it's their kind of their behaviour or their kind of workplace, their attitude in the workplace or whatnot, if that's being noticed that it's not kind of what it once was, or it's in a negative light. If you approach it through that kind of a health and a compassionate lens to probe, you'll probably get a lot further than if you go down a hard line punitive measure. You know, and that's not saying that every poor behaviour or every poor attitude or poor work ethic is a result of mental health injuries. Like it's not a thing where we want to make this a thing where people can then just use that as an excuse and really demean people that are suffering from it. But if you start there first, because essentially what I've seen over my time in the job is the people who manage others, any kind of managers, no matter what level they are in the organisation, the ones who look after their people and see them as an investment, effectively get paid dividends on huge amounts of respect, loyalty, attendance at work, the amount of effort that they put in and the quality of work they produce and the outcomes they produce will always correlate highly with how they're treated. That's pretty much how I would sum it up. If you look at someone as a human before you look at them as a fiery, you will get better outcomes for them and for yourself as a manager of those people.
Yeah, very true. Yeah, and I guess having that, the ability to know your people certainly goes a long way as well. Yeah,
and I think sometimes as well as putting my crew becomes my guinea pigs with things like ice baths and yoga at work and breath work and stuff. So like this year, I've been asked to deliver a session to the new recruit classes as they come through. So what I've been delivering is a breathwork program for them, which is very much around the purpose of down regulation of your nervous system. So I had to use my crew as a lot of guinea pigs of trying different things and see how they respond to it. And it's a thing where not everyone wants to do it, not everyone wants to jump in, but I think if these things are available to do while you're there, and people can become curious because you have half the crew come out and go, wow, I'm super relaxed. That was great. And the people that wouldn't naturally gravitate to some activities in time will go, oh, I might give it a go today. That type of thing, or even things like doing workouts at work. If you can put the offer out there, just saying, look, we're going to move half the gym into the back end of the engine bay and we're going to set up a big circuit chuck on for anyone out there. listen to Electric Callboy. They're like a German techno metal band. Really good to work out to. Very fun. um, and you do something together. You start a shift like that. Not only have you got them all to dump a whole heap of dopamine and endorphins into their system when they're starting their day, you're doing something that's positively working towards their health. And as like an SO, if you can make that a kind of regular type practices within your stations and crews, that promotes them to do stuff without them really thinking they're doing it, like they're just kind of getting involved with the crew and doing something as a crew, it'll pay dividends.
Yeah, Matt, I totally agree with that. There's so many benefits for that in that, and sort of a camaraderie sense, let alone a mental health and physical well-being sense. Yeah, I think it's really beneficial. Are you aware of anywhere else that is any other services or states that are doing a program similar to what you're running at the moment?
No, like I've heard of I believe the SES down here, I think, had some kind of immersive program of sorts, but I don't know what was involved. I don't know the extent of what kind of practices are involved or the duration or anything like that. I've just heard of a mental health based retreat that the SES were running. But yeah, I've got no real insight into what it actually looks like. But other than that, no, I haven't heard of any anything like what we're doing that's being put forward by agencies themselves. Like there are a range of retreats that you could find. Let's say corporate, as in privately administered kind of retreats, health retreats around the country, but
nothing in terms of a focused on first responder, emergency service workers kind of thing. What you're doing?
No.
I just think it's
I
really interesting as we know this industry. It's something that is incredibly needed, and it's great to see that somebody has taken the bull by the horns and started something. With what you have got, with what you have done. Do you see it as something that could, literally you've got the framework and can be picked up and moved to any organisation anywhere, or would there be a lot more work to be done?
No, this is cookie cutter. You'd rebadge it. So essentially, another thing, like research has shown that when it comes to injured workers, that when the employer is at the forefront of their recovery, better outcomes are seen.
Right.
So something like this, hypothetically, if you want to run it up with you guys at QFES, and endorsed by the organisation and badged and being run and fronted by its own people, it will go a very long way into the outcomes for the people up there. The same thing would apply for police or things like that. It's just the nature of what we're doing isn't something that's specific for firefighters and wouldn't apply to anybody else. It's for people in a human context. Mm-hmm. The thing that makes it appear firefighter centric is that we're providing it just to our own. Mm-hmm. As far as what we actually do, and the nature of what's involved and the formatting of how it plays out and the way it's scheduled, could apply anywhere around the country.
Yep. Yeah, I would love to see something like that implemented as a standard practice across all fire services everywhere, all emergency services everywhere. I think it would be hugely beneficial. I think the new wave, or I'm not even certain if it's the new wave of mental health treatment in terms of all the things you're doing, is hugely beneficial. So, I'd love to see someone pick up what you're doing and bring it up here and see it spread like wildfire, pardon the pun.
Sam, mate, that's fabulous in what you're doing, and look, we can only hope that all first responders can reap the rewards from what you're doing and the program that you've put forward. So, mate, just a final to the end of the podcast session here. Obviously, mental health is the drive for us to get this across as many people as we possibly can, and to make, small differences means a lot for anybody, but we really, focusing on just making that change to, even if it's one person, we're getting somewhere. So you're certainly someone that's seeing the rewards from that. So, mate, last words from you from that perspective.
Yeah, well, first, thanks again for having me along. It's been great to have a chat. And exactly like you said, it's if we can promote people to put their hand up, ask for help, that will go a long way. Mental health challenges, depending on where you find yourself at what point when you may start looking for help. The reality is it's not a sprint, it's a marathon. But you got to remember your brain is your CPU for your whole system of your body. Just because we can't see it, we often forget how complex it is and the impact that it can have on every other part of us. So kind of, if you're going to start getting some treatment and asking for help, remind yourself to be patient, be kind to yourself, and remember that a bad day doesn't mean a bad week. A bad week doesn't mean a bad month. When people recover from mental health challenges, it's not linear. You improve, and then you'll have a bit of a regression, then you'll improve further, and you'll have a bit of regression, and you'll improve further. A good way to actually monitor that, that's quite tangible, is writing things down. So if you write things down, and people, whether you journal or diarise, when you're having a really bad time, you can actually flip back in time to see where you're at, a month or two prior, which can actually put it in perspective to realise you were still progressing further and better than you were a number of months ago. That in itself can help pull you out of the funk.
Which is something that's been highlighted in the last 4 episodes that we've done with different content experts, and everyone's speaking the same language. So that in itself is enough to reinforce that this stuff really works, and we need to adopt these processes.
And ideally, if you go down that line of journaling, you actually do it by hand. It's shown, handwriting builds neural pathways compared to punching something in on an app or typing on a laptop. And it can be quite therapeutic, especially at the end of the day before you go to sleep. That's how you can get things out of your head to be able to promote into a better state of rest as well.
Excellent.
It's incredible. There's 3 things that have been spoken about by the majority of our guests: breathwork, ice baths, and journaling. All of them just seem to be coming up over and over again. So, really glad that you've been able to reinforce that again. And I know there's a whole heap of other things that you've mentioned as well there, Sam. If you wouldn't mind, just as we finish off, can you just go over the things that you do on the retreat, the modalities that people do? That way people can go away from here and they can do their own research on each one if they so choose.
Yep. So we do breath work, the cold exposure, which is the ice baths, yin yoga. So that particular style of yoga is you're holding poses for generally kind of up to 5 minutes. It's a slow moving practice. Art, PT, so just, we're talking about exercise in general, guided meditation, and the body work or massage.
Excellent.
As well as the surfing.
There you go. Most important, you'd say.
Yeah.
On top of the board, not under it.
Exactly.
Thanks a lot, Sam. Really appreciate your time. I think what you are doing down there is enormously beneficial and is really changing the lives of heaps of people, not only the people who are the first responders going through it, but their families and friends, and the ripple effect of that is massive, mate. So well done.
Excellent.
Keep up the great work, and we look forward to talking to you again.
Great. Thanks for your time.
Thanks, Sam.
See you later.